off today with a little bit of the history of genetics. So, for thousands of years, people have known that offspring resemble their parents in lots of ways. That's just sort of commonplace. But it isn't until the 1800s that people really started to study it more extensively. And so when we talk about genetics, the word comes from genes. And we know that the genes are information about us stored in our chromosomes. And genetics is basically the study of heredity, or how traits are passed down from one generation to another. We know that parents pass on genetic information to their children, and the study of that and the patterns of how that information is passed down is what we call genetics. And sort of one of the first people to really look at this and study it in depth is this guy. His name is Gregor Mendel. He worked in the 1800s. He was a monk, a religious person. He lived in a monastery. So he had some free time, honestly. And what he really liked, what he was interested in, was botany, studying plants. And that's what he did. He studied plants, specifically pea plants is what he did his work with. And he came up with, he looked at the results of when you breed this pea plant with this pea plant, what happens. And he kept careful results. And so eventually, after he published his work, he is now known as the father of genetics.
Yes.
We know, we still use the information that Mendel came up with as the basics of how traits can be inherited. We've learned, obviously, much more since Mendel's time, but the rules he came up with are still valid today. So he's a father of genetics, and what he did was he would take pea plants, always use pea plants, and cross them. And that means, when we say cross them, we mean breed two pea plants together. So as, we talked about this a little bit in the past, that plants reproduce sexually. Most plants reproduce sexually. And so there's reproductive cells in plants just like there are in animals. We don't call them sperm and egg cells, but pollen is basically the equivalent of a male sperm cell. It's a tiny little cell produced by a male plant or male parts of the flower that has half the chromosomes of the plant. There's also ovules, tiny little egg cells that plants have that also have half the number of chromosomes, and when they combine in fertilization, they grow into an offspring, an embryo. We would call it a seed today. But that's the same process that other animals use, sexual reproduction, combining half the chromosomes from the father and half from the mother to form the offspring. So what he would do is he'd take pollen from one pea plant on a little sort of paintbrush thing and transfer it to a female plant, or the female parts of a plant, and fertilize the eggs with the pollen from one male. And so he would look at, okay, if I have this pea plant that's tall and this pea plant that's short, if I breed them together, what are the offspring like? Are they tall, are they short, are they in between? And he did this thousands and thousands of times, carefully recording all of his data, and came up with some conclusions that we're going to talk about today. So he crossed pea plants, observing their traits, like the height, the color, the texture, and carefully recorded all this data and analyzed it. And he started to observe that there are certain patterns that he found. Do you have a question? Yeah, by pollen. The next slide will show you a little bit about the actual reproductive organ. So after all this work and carefully recording all of his results, he started looking at the patterns that he saw. And his conclusion is that these traits in the pea plant were each controlled by two factors. today we call those factors genes. That these different traits, whether a pea plant is tall or short, is controlled by 2 genes. And one of each of those genes comes from each parent. And that makes sense because each sex cell contributes one of them. What do we call sex cells? What's the other term we could use? Gamete, yeah. So each sex cell, each gamete, contributes one of those genes to the offspring. So the way that he did this, like I said, he used pea plants, and pea plants are a good example. They have very easy to observe characteristics. They're easy to pollinate, and so this is the flower of a pea plant. Now, different plants are different. Some plants, one plant has all male flowers, and one separate plant has all female flowers. Sometimes they're mixed on one plant. Sometimes each flower has male and female reproductive organs. It depends on the species, but a flower is really the reproductive organs of a plant. So if somebody gives you a flower, they're giving you a plant's reproductive organs. And so the pea plants have both male and female reproductive parts on one flower. The male parts is the anther. And you've seen that, anyone saw like a big lily or something, that they're sort of on these little stalks. They have a round oval at the end, and they're kind of powdery, with little sort of different colored powder at the end. That powder is the pollen. Those are the male reproductive cells. They're on the ends of these anthers. The female parts of a flower is the stigma, and the pistil is this larger section, but the stigma, this very tip here, that's where a pollen cell can land and begin growing into the pistil and eventually fertilize one of those ovules. Once that happens, usually the ovary of the plant, okay, this whole section, starts to grow into a fruit. That's what a fruit is. A fruit, you know, if you eat an apple, what you're biting into is the ripened ovary of that plant. Inside of the fruit are seeds. A seed is basically the embryo of the plant. Okay? And that's what a fruit is. That's why, you know, people say, oh, well, a tomato is really a fruit. And it's true. Because a tomato has seeds in it. The tomato is the ripened ovary. And that's considered a fruit in scientific terms. And that's how plants reproduce. Pollen, you know, if you're allergic to pollen, you're allergic to the male reproductive cells of plants. In different seasons, they release this pollen. It blows around through the air. If you ever come out like in your driveway or something, during those times there's all sort of green or yellow pollen on the driveway or on your car. Basically, in some plants, that pollen just blows through the air and randomly fertilizes the female parts of the same species. Other times, animals, like a bee, transfers that pollen from one plant to another. It just varies from plant to plant. Sydney?
Wait, so if there's something like a fruit makes fruit with seeds?
Yeah, if it has seeds in it, it's a fruit. Yep. Yep. And if you ever had plants in your yard, like if you had a garden, you'll know a tomato or a cucumber or a pea. How many of you have a garden at home? Okay. What did all those things start off as on the plant? No? Flowers. They start off as a flower, but then eventually the fruit starts to grow out of it. All right. That's not too important for our purpose, but you should understand that. All right, so just in summary, if we're thinking about genetics in humans, how many chromosomes in a sperm cell?
23.
In an egg cell?
23.
And in a zygote? 46. All right. So now today we have some different terms. Today, those factors that Mendel was talking about, we call them genes. And in our discussion of genetics, we're going to stay pretty simple. Now, many human characteristics, many complex characteristics, are not as simple as we make them sound in this unit, but for our purposes, this is what we need to know. Most characteristics are a result of two genes, and genes can come in two versions, dominant or recessive. What does dominant mean?
Ooh. Like, say like a child look more like the father.
Oh, well, it could be related to that.
Like a primary gene or has a
Well,
bigger
just in
effect?
general, not in terms of genes. If I say that your soccer team dominated the other team, what's that mean?
Like,
Better.
Better, stronger, you were on top of the other team. In genes, dominant means sort of the stronger version of the trait, the one that will show through. Whereas recessive means the opposite. It's sort of the weaker version. It's the one that can kind of get covered up and hidden. So genes come in dominant and recessive versions. Whenever we talk about genes, we use letters to symbolize them. Whenever we're talking about the dominant gene, we use a capital letter. So as an example, pea plants can either be tall or short. There's two varieties. The tall gene is dominant. So we use a letter to symbolize it. We use a capital T to symbolize the tall gene. The recessive gene, we use what? A lowercase letter. So for a short pea plant, what letter do you think we use to indicate a short gene? That's kind of a trick question. I would imagine you're going to get it wrong. Who wants to give me an answer? Sydney. What were we going to say? You had your hand up earlier, right? No? What would we use for the short gene? What letter? Belle?
Lowercase s.
That's what I thought you would say. But we're not going to use a lowercase s.
Lowercase w.
Lowercase t.
Why T?
Because, I don't know, the same letter.
Yes, we are. You use the same letter as the dominant version, but you use it in the lowercase. So the gene for a short plant would be a lowercase t. So we always use the dominant trait first letter. So if we think about pea plants and their height, there's three possible combinations of genes we could have. Since each plant has two genes for height. Some of them could be pure dominant. So what two letters do you think a pure dominant pea plant would have?
T. P-U-D.
Capital T.
2 letters.
Capital P.
Capital T.
Capital T.
And another
Capital T.
capital T.
Right. Pure dominant. Pure sort of means both the same. Dominant means the capital letter, so big T, big T. Or a pea plant could be pure recessive.
Small t, small t.
Right, that would have 2 lowercase t.
Why?
Because again, you always use the lowercase version of the dominant trait. What's the other? The other option is called a hybrid. So what 2 letters do you think a hybrid plant has? There's only one more possibility, Julia.
Capital T and lowercase t.
Yeah, it has one of each, capital T and a lowercase t. That's what a hybrid is. Now, let me ask you this question. This isn't something for you to write down, but this plant, this pure dominant pea plant, will it be tall or short?
Oh.
Tall. How about this one?
Sure.
How about this one?
And the middle.
No.
Tall.
Why?
Because the capital
Because
T
the
first.
capital-
Hold on, Garrett. Give me the answer. Why, Garrett?
Because the capital T is first, but also the dominant is the stronger form.
Yes. So it does. The order isn't important. Even if we're little t, big T, it would still be tall. But it's tall because it has one of the dominant versions. And that's the stronger version. That's the one that shows through. It still has the lowercase t gene, but that's kind of hidden. That recessive gene doesn't show through. Rachel?
How would you be like normal height?
What's that?
How would you be
Well,
like,
this is about pea plants.
oh.
So human height is different. All right, a couple more terms you need to know. When we're talking about an organism, we will be using the words phenotype. What is its phenotype and what is its genotype? Phenotype is, you can usually think of it as the physical appearance of that organism, or how that trait shows through. It's always going to be a word. So if we're talking about pea plants, we say the tall pea plants. Or if we're talking about the hair color of somebody, blonde. We're describing the effects of these genes. Whereas if we talk about genotype, we're talking about the actual genes, the genetic makeup of that organism. And in that case, we're always going to give a couple letters. Big T, little d, little t. Whatever the case may be. We talk about the organism's genotype. We're talking about which specific genes it has. So look, I have two pea plants here pictured. We're talking still about the height of them. What's the phenotype of this pea plant? Matthew?
Like tall.
Yeah, that's all you have to say. It's tall. So what could its genotype be based on what we were just talking about? If it's a tall pea plant, Sydney?
Big T.
That's one option. What else would give a tall pea plant? So go ahead.
Oh, little T.
Yes. So big T or big T little t, either one would give a tall pea plant because the big T is dominant. What would the phenotype of this plant be? Rachel?
Short.
That's a short plant. What would its genotype be? DJ? Yeah, little t, little t. That's the only one that would result in a short pea plant. Okay, so we're good so far? All right, now, Punnett squares are going to be what we spend the majority of our time in this unit practicing. And so we need to learn how to do a Punnett square here. A Punnett square is basically a tool, a diagram that you can use to predict what would happen if two parents had offspring. What would their offspring be like? You do a Punnett square to figure that out. Have you guys ever done these before?
No.
I don't think so. Okay. So it's really not very complicated. It's pretty simple once you learn how to do it. So let's take some examples. Let's do this one first. So if we have two, we're still going to talk about pea plants and tall or short. We use Punnett squares for lots of different characteristics, but for now we'll stick with that. So if one pea plant has a big T gene, it's pure dominant. Would this be a tall or a short plant?
Oh.
Right. And we're going to cross it. It's going to breed with a plant that's little t. What's that one?
Short.
Short. So if you cross a tall plant and a short plant, what do you get? Medium? Tall?
Oh, you get tall.
Well, we're going to see. A Punnett square allows us to predict what the offspring are going to be like. So here are the steps that you follow. You take one of the parent genes and put them on top. Start with that one. Big T on top, big T on top of that box. And we take the other parent. We put their genes on the side of the box. Little t, little t. And then we combine to fill in each of these four boxes. These four boxes represent the offspring. So in this box, from up here, it's going to get a big T. And from the side, it gets
A little T.
a little t. Down here, it's a big T from up here, little t from over there. From up here, big T. From here, Here,
Big T,
big T and a little t. Now this was easy because they all come out the same, but that's not always the case. So, now I have my box filled in, my Punnett Squares completed. And now what you look at is these boxes represent the offspring. So in this case, only one genotype is possible. What is it?
Big T, little T.
Big T, little t. What percent of the offspring would have that genotype?
100%.
100%. 4 out of 4 boxes have big T, little t. That's 100% of the offspring. What that means is that if you ever have 2 pea plants, one's big, pure dominant, one's pure recessive, and you cross them, you always end up with only big T, little t. There's no other options, no other possibility. And so, what would those plants be? Tall, short, or medium?
Tall.
They'd all be tall. 100% of the offspring would be tall if you did this cross. And Mendel noticed this. He noticed that if you had a pure dominant pea plant and you crossed it with a pure recessive, it always ended up the same. All of the seeds grew tall. And so we started to put together these ideas to allow him to predict it. All right, so that was an easy one. Let's get a little more complex. Now we have 2 different parents. We have a hybrid parent, big T, little t, crossed with a pure recessive parent, little t, little t. So again, the procedure is the same. So I know some of you already did this. 1 parent on top, 1 parent on the side. It doesn't matter. You'll get the same result, regardless of which parent you put on top or which on the side. All right, so what should be in this box? Raise your hand and tell me what's going to get filled in here, Fallon.
Big T, then little T.
Yep, big T from the top, little t from the side. How about this box? Matthew?
Big T, little T.
Big T from the top, little t from the side. How about this box, PJ?
little T.
Yep, little t from the top, little t from the side. And then this one, Grant?
Little T, little T.
Good, little t, little t.
Go, Grant.
All right, so what are my 2 possible genotypes if those 2 parents reproduce, Sydney? Yeah, big T, little t, and little t, little t. What percent of the offspring would be each?
50%.
Garrett?
50%.
Yeah, 50-50.
Oh, I put that.
2 out of the 4 boxes have little t, and 2 out of 4 have big T, little t. It's 50-50. What are their phenotypes that are possible? Rachel?
Short and tall.
Short and tall. What percent will be each?
50.
50% of the offspring will be tall, 50% will be short.
This one's easy.
Yeah, so once you know how to do it, it's easy. So again, these are probabilities. It doesn't mean that if you did this cross and you did it 10 times, you always would end up with 5 tall and 5 short. It's just that that's the probability. If you know anything about probability, you know that it's not guaranteed. You guys study probability in math yet?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this on a side note. If you flip a coin 10 times, what is the probability, what are the greatest chances that you're going to get? What would you expect
How to do?
based on probability?
5 tails, 5 heads.
5 tails and 5 heads. Could you flip 10 times and get all heads?
Yeah.
Yes, it's possible. Is it possible to flip a coin 100 times and get all heads?
Yes.
1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
Still possible?
Yeah.
Possible, but it's never.
Exactly, Grant. It's possible, but it's not
Not likely.
not probable, not likely. It's really never going to happen. I shouldn't say never, because it is possible, but that's how probability
Doesn't it take like a lifetime to count to 1,000,000?
All right, let's do one more. So now you guys fill this in all on your own. I think most of you feel like you understand pretty well. Go ahead and fill in this last Punnett Square. And if you really feel comfortable, fill in the bottom as well.
I have a question. I got like the answers, but like on the top right corner, that one, does the big T, the capitalized T, always go first?
We usually always write it first.
Okay.
The order doesn't really matter, and you could write the lowercase t, but we almost always write the capital first. All right, how many people did it? Are you working still? How many people think they got it? Pretty good.
But I got the table, not the answer.
All right, keep working though.
Not the answer.
You're not sure about it,
I'm not
or you
sure
you
about
just didn't finish it? Okay.
I'm not sure about it.
All right, let's see. What should go on top, Riley?
Big T, little T.
Big T, little t. How about on the side, Francesca?
Big T, little T.
Same thing, big T, little t. Both parents are the same. All right, what do I fill in this box, Nina?
Big T, big T.
Big T from the top, big T from the side. How do I fill in this box, Spencer?
You do, wait, which box? That one?
What's that?
That one?
Yep,
You do, small t, or big T, small t?
yep. A big T from the top, small T from the
Small
side.
t.
How about this one, Sean?
Little t, big T.
Little t, big T. We usually, this is what Grant was asking. He said, you always put the big T first, usually we do. It doesn't matter, it still ends up the same result. How about this box, Thomas, what should be here?
Little t, little t.
Yes, little t, little t. So that's our Punnett Square filled in correctly. Hopefully you got it. All right, what are my possible genotypes in this case? Hannah?
Big T, big T.
Okay, what else could I get?
Big T, little T.
And what else?
Little T, little T.
Yeah, I have all three are possible in this Punnett Square. All right, what are the percentages that I ended up with after I did this? PJ? 25% big T, big T? Okay, because 1 out of 4 boxes. How about big T, little t, PJ? 50%, because there's 2 out of 4 boxes, and little t, little t? Yep. 25% of the offspring will be pure dominant, 50% will be hybrid, and 25% will be pure recessive. How about percentages? So what are the 2 possible phenotypes? Brittany, what are the 2 possibilities?
Tall and short.
Yeah, some are going to be tall, some of these plants will be tall, and some will be short. Samantha, what percent will be tall?
75%.
Yep, 3 out, this one will be tall, 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 3 out of 4, 75%, and 25% short. And again, Mendel noticed this. He knew that when he crossed hybrid pea plants, he always got about 75% tall and 25% short. So in this case, you can see 2 tall pea plants when crossed could give you a short pea plant because of the G. So everyone pretty clear about how to do this? All right, we're going to do one more slide here. Now I want you to do this one on your own. We're going to switch it up a little bit. Now we're not going to talk about tall or short. We'll talk about something else, the color of the peas. Peas can actually come in either green or yellow varieties. Yellow is dominant to green. So yellow is the dominant version. Go ahead and fill in this Punnett Square and answer these 2 questions showing a cross between these 2 parents. Pure dominant parent and a pure recessive parent. Let me give you one more note before you start, because I always had trouble with this. With a letter like Y, it's easy to do the Punnett Square and then not be able to tell the difference between your uppercase and lowercase, because they're kind of similar. Here's what I do. I always make my lowercase letters lowercase cursive, so I always can be sure about which is uppercase, which are lowercase. Some letters it's not important, but some like S's, sometimes because capital S, lowercase s look the same, it's just the size. So I usually try to do cursive for the lowercase.
Oh, that was hard.
But go ahead and fill in this Punnett Square and let's see how you do. Alright, what should go on top, Kevin?
Oh my. Big Y.
Okay, big Y, big Y. AJ, what should go on the side? Little y, little y. How should I fill in this box, Brittany?
Big Y and little Y.
Big Y and little y. How about this box? Julia?
Big Y, little Y.
Oh shoot, we did it wrong. Big Y, little y there. You're right, big Y, little y there. How about this last box? Hannah? Big Y, little y. What percent of these offspring are going to be yellow, Grant?
100%.
100%. All of them will be yellow. What percent will be green, PJ? 0% green. Not too difficult. Once you get to know how to do it, we'll do some practice.